What's going on, guys? My name is Oais Raza, and welcome back to another episode of Crushing It, a podcast dedicated to inspiring young individuals to pursue their passion by showcasing other individuals who are doing exactly that. Again, I'm your host, Oais Raza, but before we jump into today's guest, I want to give a huge shout out to this season's sponsor, the Herb Keller Center for Entrepreneurship here on campus. They are the starting point and launchpad for everything related to startups. So whether you need founder resources, are looking for funding, or you just want to pitch practice with mentors or investors, they are the place to go. So make sure you check them out in the link in the description below. And if you can't find a way to connect with them, just leave a comment about what you're working on, and I'll go ahead and do that for you. I also want to thank our other sponsors, the Blackstone Launchpad, a cross-curricular hub for entrepreneurship here on campus, and ATI, a deep tech incubator that services early-stage companies at UT Austin. Now on to today's guest. Today's guest is an individual who pioneered the food blogging industry on Instagram. While wrapping up her communications degree at UT Austin, she started Austin Foodstagram, which has garnered over 80,000 followers on Instagram. Last year, she went full-time on her blog and now focuses her attention on creating content for brand partners and local restaurants. Please join me in welcoming Rachel Holtin.
Hi guys, so pumped to be here today. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. So before we jump into things, you obviously run a food blog, right? But when you're going and looking for restaurants, are you looking for more of the aesthetic of the restaurant and like how they present their dishes, or more of the taste?
So I think it really depends. Obviously, ultimately, food is about the taste, but we are in this day and age of Instagram. And so what I'm finding is actually, I think Instagram's inspired this movement of restaurants to really care more about aesthetic. But ultimately, at the end of the day, their food needs to be good. And so I've seen a lot of food writers lately talking about this specific topic just because I think the restaurants, the new restaurants and the trendy ones really do care so much about aesthetic and how they're going to look on Instagram. But I mean, ultimately, if their food's not good, I don't think they have a life.
Well, I mean, if you're not like, you know, specifically going for content, but
yeah,
as an Instagrammer in general, like if you have the opportunity to create more content, you will do it, right? So when you are deciding just generally, not trying to specifically go for content, then do you decide based on taste or aesthetics?
Yeah, definitely. If I'm not going for content, it would be about taste.
Okay.
And approachability. I mean, I think there's so many factors. Like, you want to go to a restaurant that has good service. You want to go to a place that their pricing isn't outrageous. You know, you're getting something that you feel is of value and you feel you paid the right amount for. And then, of course, that the food was good and up to the standard that it should be.
Awesome. And you run one of the most like popular Instagram pages related to food here in Austin, right? But I'm sure it didn't it just start off that way, obviously, right? So where did all of this begin for you? Like, where did your journey begin?
I like to say everything starts with 0 on Instagram. So one day I started with 0 followers and I started posting pictures of food. My first photo was of a crepe, actually, in Houston. I just graduated from UT when I started the account, so I was living in Houston temporarily, and I started it under ATX Foodstagram. Not the best handle. Luckily, we got Austin Foodstagram later, but it kind of just started like that. It was a picture of a crepe, and it was a beautiful crepe at that, but I just posted it. I was like, this will be a fun way to keep up with all the fun places that I'm getting to eat and all the restaurants that I'm exploring, and so it just kind of continued from there. Ultimately, I was spending a lot of time, too, on the platform, finding other foodies and people doing what I was doing. It was still the very early days of the kind of influencer-esque accounts where they were content themed around fashion or food or travel, whatever it might be. So I think that definitely helped getting in early. But
okay, and when like most content creators have that switch in what how they approach their content, right? Like, so you're usually just like taking it with a normal camera, and then it's like, oh wait, this is something big, and now you suddenly have a professional camera, right?
Yeah.
So when did you make that switch?
So I made the switch to get a nice camera about 2 years ago, when I kind of was continuing to see this take off. I wouldn't even say it was necessary because I did take most of my stuff on iPhone, and iPhone photos, even to this day, are really well received. But primarily now, especially since it's my full-time business and I'm partnering with brands where I'm selling rights to photos, I need to have a nicer camera, obviously, to do that. I'm not going to give them an iPhone photo. So.
Was there like a specific moment that like you realized it was taking off, or was it just like growing
it
steadily?
is kind of funny to look back because I wouldn't say there was just one moment. Like, I try to think about that all the time. I'm like, when did I know this was a thing? And I think the growth, I hit 10,000 followers within 40 weeks.
Oh,
so
wow.
That was pretty quick. And then the next 10,000 was within 20 weeks. So
wow.
I will say that I think seeing that growth probably was a reason that I continued to be persistent about posting. But at that time, it wasn't a business yet or anything. I even realized, even with 20,000, I didn't really know I could make money off this one day, or that it could even be a small part of my career. So, I mean, I was just doing it for fun, but it was cool to see that response. And I think the fact that people were, following and paying attention and commenting was definitely a factor in why I decided to continue, and I never gave up on the account.
Okay.
So I'm thankful for that, for the early followers.
No, it's usually, I've noticed that it's usually the case that when you don't know the direction of where something's going in, but you're still like persistent in it, something obviously like ends up blossoming.
Yeah, I think you kind of know when something's good is happening, but you don't always know like what it's going to end up looking like.
Yeah.
In my case, if it's going to look like a job or if it's just going to continue to be a fun hobby. But in each case, like, I think the first thing I got out of the account was I was getting some free food, so that was cool. I'm like, I'll keep doing this because some restaurants want to host me. But still, like, it was a slow build and something that I really had to spend time with before it really turned into anything.
You mentioned earlier about how new restaurants like are taking on this trend, right? Like where we want to like create viral kind of like dishes so that people take pictures of them and stuff. When did you start noticing that switch? Because I notice it all the time, especially with like restaurants opening up in Houston and stuff. Like they'll spend less amount in the space of like their restaurant, and they'll like make it really small, but they'll decorate it in a way where everything is, all the elements within the restaurant are for that sake to go viral.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that because there's a restaurant in New York that I went to that I saw on Instagram, and it was so cute, and I walk in and it's like a closet. It's so small, and of course it's New York, so they're getting all this traffic, and it was really popular on Instagram at the time, so we had to wait in this corner for our table in this tiny space.
Wow.
But anyways, yeah, I think like I noticed that probably because when I started my account, like I was saying, this wasn't a common thing. So I would say about 2 years in, when I was starting to grow and restaurants were starting to realize that they needed these people with these followings to come in, and they were starting to cater to that. So you'd see like Peach Tortilla, for example, did a really big milkshake here in town, and it was colorful, and it was so many like unnatural food colors they had to put in it, but it looked really cool, and everyone was Instagramming that. And I think they did it around South by a few years back, and then they've kind of kept it because it's been so popular. But other examples of that I've seen, like in Miami, there's this one food blogger, and she's known for having these giant slices of pizza. She's a little blonde like myself, but the pizza's like this big. It's so funny. Like one slice is this big. Like the whole thing.
I've seen something like that, and I think it was San Antonio. They give like a 70 or 80 inch like.
Yeah, and like Round Rock Donuts does a donut that's this big. So things like that. But when you go beyond just the food, like it is the decor in these restaurants sometimes that is getting Instagram. Like you have a really cool neon sign, and everyone's going for that. Or like Irene's is a good example of, they have that thing when you walk in. I don't even know, it just says their name in neon lights, but everybody was Instagramming that for the longest time.
Yeah, it's almost as if like because of this new social media age, like you not only have to have good food, you have to like take everything into account in order to actually have a successful restaurant.
It's experiential. So the whole thing from when you walk in, it's like an art form. You have to have the perfect design team. You have to have, it should all flow together and be this like perfect thing. Like people are spending more and more money on food, but they want the experience that comes with that. So
yeah, and I think some people take it to the extreme, because I like see some social media posts where I can tell like why, like it's not something healthy or something that you would genuinely like want to eat, but it goes viral. Like I'm talking about those burgers with like 7 different dishes within them, and then they're just like putting them on top.
Nobody needs to eat that.
Yeah, and you see it on Instagram. There's like millions of views on it. So
yeah, definitely food porn really took off with Instagram.
Exactly.
It was like so unrealistic. The actual like someone would eat this, but at the same time, people love seeing that. And I noticed that too for my account. It was like the desserts and the sweets and the big like pizzas and burgers and things that were super unhealthy were getting more likes than obviously a salad or something. But for me too, it's, I try to make it what I eat, and so I would incorporate some of those things because I knew they would perform well. But like ultimately, I also like to eat healthy. So if there's like a cool food truck like Ranchian who you had on, I would showcase their bowls because they're also doing a really unique thing. They started with the university, which I think was unique. They're a food truck in Austin, and they're doing healthy bowls. They were the first of their kind. So.
Okay. And so when you were doing that, right? Like, was it like Austin Foodstagram is different from like your personal brand, right? But I still see that you incorporate your personal brand within Austin Foodstagram. So
Yeah.
how are you kind of navigating that? Like, what's the mindset behind it?
Yeah, self-branding for me really started about a couple of years ago. I saw that a lot of lifestyle influencers were actually doing really well, and brands were kind of targeting those styles of accounts, and it also opened up the opportunity to work with more brands when you branch outside of just food. So obviously food will always be my bread and butter. A little bit of a pun there, but anyways, so I think it's important though to have your face on things, because you are ultimately the personality. And when you come and think about the day and age of influencer, these people are hiring influencers as talent. They're hiring them because of their personality that they put behind their account, and sometimes just having a face behind something means so much more than just slapping a burger on a plate and taking a photo of it. So while I will still showcase a lot of just food, I like to be a personality behind the account and someone who's almost like your tour guide through going to these restaurants and showing the experience that you have there.
Well, we'll get more into like the influencers themselves, but as far as like the progress of your account, you eventually, like, it took off, and then you realized there was opportunity there, right? And you realized that you could do this full time. So what was like your mindset behind that? How did you have the confidence to be like, you know what, I'm gonna quit like my job and I'm gonna go do this Instagram thing?
Yeah, so there's a big story leading up to that, I would say, because I only went full time this past July on the account, but it was kind of like seeing as the opportunity built, and you know, as I was getting more brand sponsors, it did make more sense. But really where it all started, I was a teacher out of college, so when I moved back to Austin and I changed it to Austin Foodstagram, I got this job with a school shadowing a speech therapist. My degree had been in speech and language pathology at UT, so I was going down that path. I was going to do 3 more years of grad school potentially, but before I committed to that, I wanted to take a job where I could shadow someone in that work field, and so I took on this teaching position. I only lasted about 6 months there, so it really speaks to the big 180 that was coming, but a lot of my friends thought I was crazy when I quit that job. It just wasn't a fit. I wasn't, there was some like political things happening in the school. It was a nonprofit, and it just wasn't for me. So I got out quickly, and I went and I took a non-paid internship with the Austin Chronicle, because I wanted to learn marketing, and I hadn't majored in marketing at UT. I was in the communications school, and I took actually advertising and journalism and a bunch of those classes, and some of those were actually my favorite classes, so it's like, oh, maybe I should have thought about that. But you know, when you're in college, sometimes you don't know yet, so I was still learning my path, and I, you know, after quitting teaching, when my Instagram had been taking off, I was like, wait, marketing could be interesting, especially in this age where social marketing is very up and coming. So I was the social media marketing intern for the Austin Chronicle. I got to help with their food issue. It was a perfect fit. Like I said, I was an unpaid internship, but I was getting my feet wet, and I was happy to be there every day and learn and meet people. So I
think that part right there about getting an unpaid internship, people want to do things, but they'll never like put their ego aside in order to do something like that, to learn something. So what you did there, that step in the process, like if more people did that, they would understand what they're actually good at.
Yeah, that was a really important step for me, and this is why I love telling this part of the story, is kind of like my whole shift from like coming out of college and then getting to where I am today. Like there were so many different turns and steps along the way. I've really only had the same job for about a year or less throughout. So from there, I found an actual paying job. I got a job with a marketing agency, and they were representing restaurant clients in Austin. So again, a really great fit. Social media was starting to become a part of their strategy, and so they really liked having someone with my skill set come in. So I did that for probably about a year. I can't even remember now, but anyways, I was doing that, and I was going to a lot of events and networking still. I do think networking was like also a big part of this, because all the opportunities that I had came from just getting out there and meeting people in the media world and in Austin. And so I went to this pool party one summer and I met the founders of Favor Delivery, Ben and Zach, and I had a conversation with them. I had been working with Uber Eats on my Instagram at that time, just with some trade stuff, but they were like starting to work with influencers, and I met the founders of Favor, and I'm like, are you guys doing this? If not, you should be. And so a little bell kind of went off, and they were like, oh yeah, we really should be. So I was introduced to their marketing manager at the time, and then she decided to do some test programs with me, and so I was like their little guinea pig for influencer, and we did one post and had about 100 people sign up for Favor, and they were ultimately sold on influencer being the best new thing for marketing for their company, so they rolled this program out in all the cities that they had operating at that time, and their PR manager was managing it then too alongside the marketing manager, but it was just getting too much for them to handle, and so the new CEO had just come on, Jack Bath, and they had just closed $13 million in funding too, so they were at their Series A, and they're like, hey, we need to bring someone in to do this, and you've been the one helping us this whole time, so we'd like to offer you this position. And when I met with the CEO, I didn't know he was going to do this, but he ultimately offered me the job on the spot pretty much. I had to still go through the interview process, but it was really great.
Were you doing this all for free up until that point?
So I was, I mean, they were giving me Favor credits and free food and things to order and post, but no, they weren't paying me. It was just kind of like I was helping them. I didn't manage their programs. I just was doing through my account marketing for them.
So ultimately doing the free internship thing actually worked.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. All the things that I did just to help people and get out there and meet people like helped so much. I mean, it made my career for sure. So then with Favor, I got the job. I was working there. I did that for about a year and 2 months, and it was great. I mean, I really was trusted a lot in that company because influencer was working so well for them at the time. They just let me kind of run with it. They gave me a big budget. They're like, let's go to these cities. I was actually traveling more than anyone else on the team as like the youngest employee, and they're like, go to the city, do a brunch event, invite all these bloggers, and get them excited about
that's exciting. What
Favor.
the heck?
So yeah, I got to meet influencers in other cities and really just continue networking, and all of this was just working so well for the company. So, and I got to work alongside really great people. Our VP of marketing was from Live Nation, so we had a lot of executives and people that had come from great places that I was learning with. And then I got the opportunity from there to start an influencer marketplace called Trend, and then now I'm full-time blogging. So that's the short version for sure, but it has been, a lot of steps along the way, like I mentioned. So.
Okay, and what is Trend?
So Trend is an influencer marketplace. It's an app on your phone. So if you're a blogger or even just like an influencer and you're just starting out, or you're trying to get more brand deals and partnerships, it's actually a marketplace where you can go shop for brand deals. So when you go on the marketplace, it basically says what the offer would be from the brand. A lot of them are product trade deals, but I think they're starting to get more into paying people. So, you can accept a deal and you'll get paid $100 on PayPal if you post about it, or, whatever it might be, or you might get to try a case of kombucha or something like that. Okay. So really like kind of starting for, newer influencers who are trying to break into this game, we're bridging that gap of how they get connected with brands, which is sometimes the hardest part. I mean, for me, I've been doing it a while, so I have pretty great relationships, but it definitely takes a while to build those and find the right contacts. These brands are overwhelmed by the amount of influencers, and so for them, they would rather have, an agency or a marketplace to work with to bridge that gap of communication with the influencers and almost put out a net to catch bloggers, and then they can kind of filter and see who's a good fit versus just one thing that happens is influencers will reach out to popular brands and be like, hey, I want this free thing, and that can get overwhelming, especially I know hotels is a great example of this because travel blogging is everybody wants to be a travel blogger, and so hotels were just getting overwhelmed with the amount of bloggers that were reaching out and be like, hey, can I have a free stay, stay, and so while they do want to do influencer and partner with these people, they were just getting too many inbounds, so there just needed to be some sort of bridge there.
Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to filter out everyone because you have a lot of people coming in that, with everything that blows up, inauthenticity is obviously, it becomes a huge part of it, right?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people, exactly what you're saying, the hotel thing, they'll go and they'll have, pages which don't have very many authentic followers, but, they don't know that. The hotel doesn't know that. So they still get they get free hotel stays, free food all the time. So
yeah, it is easy. I mean, we're in a world of fake followers, robots, all these things that you have to be aware of. And even this week, Instagram had a situation where followers dropped. So
I saw
and
that.
everyone was like, oh, well, they were just all the fake accounts, but actually that
it was actually
bug.
a problem.
So,
yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I have a friend who works for Facebook, and so he reached out right away and was like, did you lose any followers? And I actually was one of the lucky lucky accounts that didn't lose a single follower. I think I actually gained that day. I was probably only person.
Yeah, no, actually one of my pages, it was like staying the same, but then the actual Crushing It podcast page, like it was dropping below like 7,000. I was like, either there were these fake followers there, and then I saw the Instagram problem. I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, no, and hopefully you got them back.
Yeah, no, I did. I was like, yeah, it increased and then it decreased. I don't know. Instagram needs to figure that out.
They can revert accounts back, apparently. They've had, obviously, other situations where people have been hacked, so they do have precautionary methods. But it is this whole another beast. Like, we're all relying on Instagram for our businesses, or a lot of us are, and it's great if you have multi-channels, but for a lot of us, it still is. Instagram's the biggest money maker, and so it's super interesting.
Have you heard of Shoutout?
What is it? Shopcart?
Shoutcart.
Shoutcart. No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's essentially where it's like a marketplace for pages, large pages. Like when I used to build my pages up, I would put them on there, and anyone can go there to shop for like shout outs and stuff, right? So kind of like how Trend is doing it, except you don't get brand deals, you get straight up cash. So how do you guys kind of differentiate from something like Shoutcart?
Yeah, so I guess, well, I mean, like you're saying, it's more for shout-outs and we're more for brand deals, so that's, like, one big differentiator.
But isn't it, like, one-off? Because, like, on Trend, don't you, like, go there, you pick one deal, and then you just do it?
Yeah, so you do, you just pick one brand to work with. You can pick as many as you want, actually, but each one is going to be its own post or share.
And do you get paid right away, or is it?
So, yeah, you do. You get paid right away. I actually don't work for them right now, so things might have changed since I left, but you should get paid right away, especially with the PayPal. I think that's why, they're using PayPal, is that it's very quick, transactional. But as far as like my brand deals that I do for Foodstagram, like usually a standard is net 30. So if I do a deal from the time it's posted to the time I send the invoice, I still have to wait 30 to even sometimes 60 days to get paid. So it's not always quick.
Oh man. Okay. So we do completely different deals. Mine's is like straight up, like just like Shoutcart, it's like directly.
Maybe I need to get on yours.
Yeah, you need to.
No, but I mean, it can vary for sure. And I work with an agent now, so she's managing a lot of these deals and getting them in the door. But I would say net 30 is pretty standard if you're working with a big company, because they have to process through their accounting teams. I was doing this at Favor, so I kind of know that whole thing. It can be.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because this is like actual big brands, like versus like just other pages or someone else trying to buy shout-outs.
It's like one person paying one person, but if you're going through, DoorDash, or you're going through a PR agency in New York that's paying a ton of influencers, they have to process through accounting, cut checks, send them out. So. And
right now, are your partnerships more of like, hey, send me free stuff, or hey, I'll get like credits or something like that, or is it more of like straight up?
I'm definitely shifting now that I'm full time to almost everything's compensation in cash. So I mean, ultimately these have become businesses for most influencers, and if you have a large enough following, and even if you have a small following, you should probably be getting compensated for your time in some way. So
okay, awesome.
I think I'm seeing that as an overall shift in the industry too, not just with my account, but with more and more people asking for money, even micro and nano influencers.
Micros are like, they're blowing up a lot more in terms of significance.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, those people still have authentic voices. A lot of them are like newer to this game, so brands might have already worked with other bloggers, and they're like, we want to test this. Also, if they have a limited budget, they can stretch it further and work with more people. So I do get why like the micro nano thing is really taking off, and ultimately for me, I think it's been great too. Like 80K is a really good sweet spot. Once you get up into like 300K, I mean, you're talking like 5,000 a post, so most brands are not going to be able to afford that. But in my place, it's like brands are still comfortable approaching me because they're like, okay, well, we can probably make something work. And I do work with a lot of local brands, where it's, it's something lower, or as you were saying with trade, like I will still work with restaurants on trade. So if they host me for a meal, because that's kind of always been the whole point, is to support these local restaurants. And I know that they don't always have big budgets. If it is a chain restaurant or something that's big, like one of my agents' other clients just work with McDonald's, so it's like McDonald's has this huge budget, and they also have a ton of like content opportunities. So
but you don't eat at McDonald's, so that doesn't make sense for you.
So for me it's not. So I'm like, as good as it sounds to get paid by McDonald's, I haven't done that. So
okay, let's shift gears a little bit in terms of like the actual content, right? Being a content creator, like I feel like this, and everyone that I brought on that is a content creator themselves, everyone like on the outside of the space thinks it's very easy, right? Like just clips going up here and there. You know, they're just scrolling through their feed. But as a content creator yourself, it's very, very tough, right? So on those days where you don't feel like, you know, taking pictures of food or angling something, like what kind of gets you out of bed and like keeps you going?
Yeah, so I actually really thrive on the business side of this, which is funny from like a content perspective. I think a lot of people in my position might not really, you know, want to spend a lot of time on like the relationships and like understanding the marketing factor of this. But having worked in, you know, companies like Favor and marketing agencies in the past, I kind of always had that viewpoint of like, oh, this is how I would look at this if I was a marketer working with someone like myself. And so I have like the double view of like perspective around it. I love creating content and going to restaurants, but I also like wake up and I love like looking at our deal flow and our spreadsheets, and I work with my agent really closely. It's great to have an agent because it's hard to pitch yourself when you're a blogger. Like a lot of these, and it kind of goes back to the hotel example, but when you're an influencer and you're reaching out just to get a free thing, like it's kind of just, it can come off really bad if you're not professional about it. And so my thing has always been like keeping these professional relationships, making sure I'm answering my inbox throughout the day and getting back to people in a prompt manner is really important to me. And then making sure, you know, I have someone who can represent me and actually share the significance of my account. And since it's not me, it doesn't sound like I'm bragging. I'm not like, hey, well, I have 85,000 people in Austin.
You have a hype man,
you need
basically.
Yeah, she can sell my account for me. And that's really important. I mean, if you think about it on a larger level, like you're not going to see a celebrity like The Rock selling themselves.
Exactly, yeah.
They're going to be the ones to, you know, they're just the star. They're the ones creating their own content or, you know, acting or
being
whatever.
inaccessible in a way is like a way of making yourself feel more credible.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of it is when they're hiring you as talent, like it is your image that's so important in the perception that they have of you and the account that you've built and your voice. So
And you're not working at Trend or Verb anymore, right?
No, so that's actually Verb rebranded to Trend. So
okay.
Yeah.
And so now you're just doing blogging full time.
I'm
so
blogging
what
full time
is your,
as of last July. Yeah.
Okay, so what is like your ideal like or everyday like
Every
what is
day.
what does
Every
it look
day's
like?
for sure different. It's really funny. I mean, I'm actually working from home right now, which is nice because I do have to go out and cover so many things throughout the day that home is like a home base for me. I'm like, I don't need an extra office or place to be throughout the day. But yeah, so some days like I'll usually wake up, I try to get to inbox 0 and make sure that I've communicated and responded to everybody, you know, kind of earlier in the morning so that I have time to go out during the day. A lot of days we are doing photo shoots or creating content. If we're not, a lot of like strategy planning, I take calls with my agent. So we discuss, you know, who we're going to be targeting for South by Southwest, or if it's Valentine's Day, like who do we want to work with? So we kind of plan all that out. We find the right contacts. We're working really close together. And then, you know, it really just depends on the day, though. Like, sometimes lately there's been all these staycations and resorts locally wanting to partner. So then I'll be out, you know, doing tours. And then while you're doing these tours, you're also trying to also keep your inbox clean and, like, make sure that you're communicating. So I stay plenty busy. I think other things, too, to think about, like, if, you know, now that I'm more lifestyle account and I do some fashion, I'm like trying to get new outfits from designers that have just come out. So I do some like online shopping maybe, or I go find photo props for a shoot that we're doing the next day. There's a lot of things like that too that go into the content creation process.
Are you only doing like brand deals, one-off deals, or are you trying to build those relationships out and then continue to do it?
We try to work, like our ideal partner is someone who wants to work throughout the year on several campaigns. So, and we definitely are getting more and more of that. It's taken someone like Lauren, my agent, to help me kind of get to that point, because I think if you are an influencer and you're just doing this very scrappily, you can kind of lose sight or like forget the importance of like all the follow through. Like we send a wrap report after a campaign. So after I've done a post for a brand, I wait 24 to 48 hours and I send them the results of how many people actually saw, how many people clicked over to their website, how many people followed or like went over to their handle on Instagram, things like that, all the insights that we can get in data. And we pull a report of that. And sometimes we even highlight like comments like, oh, this person commented that they intend to purchase. And so these are important things that the brands want to see to continue working with you. And then once we get that back, once we've worked with this brand, like if they either did a one-off or some of them will come in early at like 3 they want 3 to 4 or even 5 posts throughout the year, and some of them will want to test first. So if it is a test, we send them the report, and then we're like, hey, now this was such a success, let's figure out what we can do that's bigger next time.
That's odd because I never allow test posts. Like I don't think that's
test
like
posts. Well, you know,
because I feel like anyone could just come and be like, hey, I want to test this out, and it's like, oh, they just got like 7 sales, and it's like, oh, that's great. But
well,
like,
I'm not saying it's a test for free. I'm just saying like they come in,
oh,
they're not
okay,
doing,
okay,
they're not having to
go.
do a year-long thing. No, it's not. It's definitely not free.
Okay, so
Yes.
you're on the right track.
I wouldn't
here.
recommend that. No.
Exactly. So is this like the ideal thing that you imagined yourself doing? Like, is this the like the job, the passion that you wanted to pursue?
So, I mean, it's definitely like, it's kind of just come to me. Like, I feel like I've attracted this in many ways because of what I was doing and going out and hustling on the side and, you know, like creating all this content. And so, yeah, like ultimately it's definitely a dream job. And the fact that it's something I created, something that I own fully. So, you know, I get to wake up every day and decide the direction that I want Austin Foodstagram to go. And that's a really cool feeling to have that power and like building something and knowing that the opportunity is endless. I'm definitely hard on myself because I'm like, it needs to get to this level. Like, we need to do this to be at the next step. Like, with the website just launching, I'm like, I need to be writing more than I am. Like, but when it is your own thing, you're constantly pushing yourself to be better. And so that's something.
Yeah, and it's
really
almost
great.
more difficult too because like no one's like pushing you, right? Like it's only you. Like
And
you determine how far
most of
you
these
go.
influencers don't have like a big team. I mean, maybe if they're a celebrity, they might have like a few people around them. But like for me, it's, you know, it's my agent and she works off commission and myself. So it's really whatever we can pull in and do at the end of the day. My boyfriend helps with a lot of content creation and he's kind of like the Instagram boyfriend, as they always say. And I never understood that until I like actually needed that resource. And now it makes so much sense. It's like
you
if
save
they
a lot of
can
money on
help.
photographers.
Yeah, I definitely do. And, you know, like, he's benefiting from, like, you know, how all this does, too. So it's ultimately in his favor to be there and take the photos. And it's not too much extra work. He gets all the free food and perks, too. So.
Well, I like that you said that it is something that came to you and, like, you love to do it every single day, right?
Yeah.
And the point of this whole podcast is that a lot of student entrepreneurs, or not even entrepreneurs, just people trying to pursue their own passion are watching this, listening in. And one thing a lot of them, like, fail to recognize is that they need to be doing something that they like or else it's not sustainable over time, right? But the trouble with that is that a lot of people stand on the edge of like this imaginary cliff. Like that's what I like to say it as. And before they take that leap of faith, like they look down and they're like, they're way too scared to pursue their passion. So what advice do you have if they're like standing on that edge?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, like, there's so many factors you have to consider, right? But, I mean, I think there's really awesome ways you can do that, especially as someone young and right out of college. Like, that was where, for me, I feel like I did have a lot of opportunity. I was still trying a bunch of things. I mean, that's why I shifted jobs so much. And some people might come and tell you, like, you need to just do one thing and you need to do that for a long time. But it's not the case with entrepreneurship. And, you know, ultimately, you're going to have to take some risks. So you're going to have to jump. You know, you're going to have to go off the edge eventually in something that you do in life. And so, you know, if it is all the signs are pointing the right way and you've tried and you've tested and things are resonating in a small way and you know that there could be more potential, like keep doing what you're doing. I was talking to some executives for Evian Water last week and I was telling them, I'm like, you will know like if you're doing something well because it will start to resonate in a small way and then it'll start to resonate a little bit more and more and more. And so that's when you keep going and running with it, even if, you know, the end doesn't seem clear, or even if the direction doesn't, you know, you don't know where you're going, like that's when you need to take the biggest leap because that's where the opportunity lies. So.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that you tried a bunch of things because I was talking to my friend the other day and a lot of people that come to these schools and there's this, I'm a CS major, so there's no hate on like STEM or anything like that, right? But a lot of the people that go into these majors, they have been conditioned to believe that that is like the single route that they have to take, to the point where when you ask them what they would rather be doing than that, they have no other answer. So like, do you have any advice for them on how they can break through that like mindset or like break through that barrier that they
I mean, I think a lot of this goes back to like networking and surrounding yourself with a bunch of different people that are doing different things, because I think that's how you kind of learn and see what else is out there. If you have friends who are just like, you know, maybe you are a CS major, but you have a friend in marketing, you have a friend who just started their own company, you have a friend who is also an entrepreneur working for a small startup, like they probably in conversation will just naturally bring up other things that they're doing and working on. And so that will give you an open mindset to like, oh wow, these are all the opportunities out there and the different paths that people take. And even if, you know, one isn't for you, like maybe something does resonate one day and you're like, oh, maybe I'll just try this on the side, or maybe I'll even like go in and volunteer a day, or like go shadow this office just to like see what their work day is like, so I can have a different perspective on what's out there.
So you basically have to try a bunch of things.
Yeah, try a bunch of things and meet a bunch of people. I mean, people, like, you can learn so much from others. And, like, obviously we all have our friends and our groups. And, you know, some people's groups are a little more or more or less diverse, you know. But if you, particularly for me, I think I have a lot of friends that are so many different ages. And, like, I'm not saying you have to go out there and be friends with a 50-year-old. But, like, if you have a friend, like, I'm 28. So I have friends who are 23, 22 and just out of college. And then I have friends who are mid-30s and some in their 40s, and like we're all like at a little bit different phases of life, but it is interesting to see from their perspective of different things and having grown up in a slightly different time, how they view, you know, social media and what I'm doing, and how they view their own careers, and just like overall perspective. There's so many different things I can learn from these people.
So basically networking is like the key.
Yeah,
okay.
Networking.
And so what's next for you then?
So what's next? I mean, I feel like since I left in July, I'm just kind of figuring this all out still. It's fun and scary to go off on your own, but there's been a lot of opportunity, and I really just ultimately want to continue building the brand. I want to expand beyond just Instagram. I want to get more people over to the new blog site that we launched, and I want to continue creating relationships with brands that we can benefit and partner with. So I feel like there's still bounds of opportunity there that are untapped. So yeah, that's really like the near future path. I'm sure there will be something a year from now that's totally different, but
we'll have you on the podcast again. You can tell us all about
I'll tell the next phase.
So listen, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences. Is there anything you'd like to plug or anything you'd like to tell people about?
No, but you can give me a follow. It's at Austin Foodstagram on Instagram, at Austin Foodsta on Twitter, and then the website is www.austinfoodstagram.cool.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.